Welcome to the Magic Mirror Podcast. I'm your host, Khan, the Trinket Mage, and with me is my co-host, 33 Elk.
Hello.
And after some rigorous evaluations, plus 9 different interview stages, we've decided to bring on Snail as an official host.
Glad to be finally accepted.
Yeah, I mean, interview 8 was kind of shaky, but it's okay.
Yeah, I ended up making it there in the end.
Today we are talking utility lands. We're going to be discussing some of the most popular ones and a few other ones that Snail has brought to the table. A few notes about this before we get onto the main topic is any land that does not tap for mana is going to be excluded. So Maze of Ith, plenty fine card, is going to be not added here because it does not tap for mana by itself. And then we'll follow up with a few questions from the question zone. But before we get into all that, I need to thank this podcast sponsor, Card Castle, the easy way to digitally sort your collection. You can start scanning your cards today by clicking the link in the description, and you get 1 full month of premium for free. Thanks to Card Castle for sponsoring the podcast. Okay, Snail, we're going to start with EDH Rec's top 10 most popular utility lands, correct?
Yes. So I figured we can just go through these, and then I have one honorable mention after the top 10 that I figured felt like it should be in the top 10, but maybe isn't because of price. So number 1 is Reliquary Tower.
We're starting off with a bang.
Oh yeah, this is one that I made a short about like a year ago, proclaiming my hatred for other such things, and I think my analysis is still that it's a land that I want sometimes in decks, but I think it being a staple, a cram this in every deck, is definitely a mistake.
Yeah, there's really no argument for it in most decks. I do run it. I run it in exactly one of my decks. I have a dedicated lands list, and when you sacrifice Merit Lage to great or good enough times, like around 2 to 3, it's nice to have a Reliquary Tower to keep it. Could I win without the Reliquary Tower? Sure. I run it mostly just so I don't have the headache of picking the 7 best cards in my hand when that case happens. So unless you're drawing that ridiculous amount of cards, I don't feel like it should be in your considering, like, even remotely at all. I would not add Reliquary Tower to a deck that has more than 3 colors or that doesn't draw 40 cards at a time. I feel like Reliquary Tower is at its best when you can tutor for it in a lands deck like this one, or you can draw like 50 cards at a time and then play it from your hand, the old spellbook trick, like draw into your spellbook from the big X spellbook being the 0 mana artifact that says you have no maximum hand size, and then play it same turn that you've done that. I feel like that's where Reliquary Tower is at its best, and then at worst you don't even like use the effect and it's a colorless land in your deck.
I'm on the same page as you guys. I talked about it in my number 1 deck building mistake, I believe. That video, it was if I go to EDH Rec right now and I pull up the Dragon, there's 6,000 decks that are playing it. That's Reliquary Tower in a 5-color deck. It's crazy. People love this card. Yeah, I think it's because people feel like, oh, I drew 10 cards and played my Reliquary Tower and I got to keep all of them, and it felt good that one time, and that sticks in their memory. But the only time Reliquary Tower is actually good is when you have 8 or more cards in hand, and those are all cards you want to keep. None of them do anything in the graveyard. You have no graveyard synergy, and the game is going in such a way that you can actually utilize those cards. Because if you have 8 bombs in your hand, are you actually going to be able to cast all of them? Probably not.
I think those were basically the 3 points I had in my short. So yeah, I'm definitely in agreement with that.
That's really fair. Reliquary Tower gets increasingly good the more cards you draw. I feel like that's not really too controversial a statement. I do agree you're not going to be able to cast all of them, but it gives you the most options for ooh, this got shut off. I can now play this one instead. Or you have multiple combos in your hand. If one of them gets shut off or countered, you have the backup one. Like I said, you need to be drawing 40, 60 cards before Reliquary Tower is good, in my opinion.
I don't even play it in decks that draw 40, 60 cards, because if I draw 40 cards, can I not pick the best 7 from the top half of my deck and then turn that into a win. If I can't, then like I feel like my deck is very poorly constructed, even without combos, right? I could keep a board wipe, a removal spell, a threat, another card draw spell, another card draw spell, another card draw spell, and like, shouldn't I be able to do something from there?
Yeah, you should be able to, but man, I feel really weird because I definitely can't see my mono green lands deck without it. But it also helps that I make like 40 mana in a turn with some of my combos, so I get to like also like semi omniscience most of my hand into play as well off of those turns, and I can do that multiple times. And none of the combos are like I win. Period. It's like I build a 40 zombie Merit Lage board and then pass, and then like I also get to fog on your turn and stuff like that, you know.
I was gonna say it's also obviously a much stronger card in control and especially combo decks where you have more like specific pieces that you really want to keep all of, as opposed to a mid-range deck where you might have to throw away like a couple lands, a mana rock, and a beater or two.
Yeah. I overall, I think it has application. Like I said, like I do really appreciate it in my Cura deck, but I think I expect someone to use Temple of the False God more responsibly, and that's a card that also gets a lot of shade. We won't be talking about today because it's mostly just a ramp piece, but yeah. You need to have a plan for it.
I think we're in agreement that this one is overrated. So if we're doing categories, throwing these in boxes, this one goes in the overrated box.
Oh, for sure.
Second one, and I was kind of surprised by this, is Myriad Landscape. This is one I used to like a lot, and now I have a more middling position on. What do you guys think?
Yeah, can I do a PSA? If you are playing a colorless deck, do not run Myriad Landscape. It cannot grab wastes.
Yeah, I can't.
It has to grab 2 lands that share a basic land type, which is only island, swamp, forest, mountain, plains. Wastes don't have a type. They're just basic lands, nothing. They're not waste typed. It does not work in colorless decks. There's a lot of people that still play it in there. It doesn't work. It also doesn't work very well in most decks. I think it's just a little bit too slow. I really wish it like the fact that it enters tapped and lands enter tapped is just so slow. And like the fact that it taps for colorless is not nearly as useful because it's already a tap land, so I don't know. I think it's just I'd rather play anything else. I'd rather play a tapped like 2-color dual land.
I think Myriad Landscape still works. I think it works in very specifically slow decks that also can hold up interaction. So you can crack it for ramp and also like hold up your counter spell or what have you. Like I could see it in like Chromium the Mutable, like that kind of like I play all of my cards at instant speed and I also am in 3 colors that don't ramp too well. Like that's the home, like a non-green slow deck that has a lot of instant speed answers. That's where I would feel safe playing Myriad Landscape and not a whole lot else.
I think I more or less agree, and I am also in the camp of this Myriad Landscape generally feels okay if I'm in a high land count deck, like your 39, your 40, or 41, because you usually have a choice of what land you can play. You have some alternate play on turn 1 or turn 2 or turn 3 if you want to have a land enter untapped. Whereas if you're, rocking the 34 or something, you're going to be, Myriad Landscape in hand, probably nothing else. That's your land drop, and that usually feels pretty bad especially if you're in like a 3-color deck. That feels pretty terrible. Even a 2-color deck doesn't feel great if that's the only land you have access to is your like turn 2, turn 3, turn 4 play. All right, so this one is, I would say broadly we're in agreement that it's overrated, but maybe not as much so as Reliquary Tower.
Yeah, it's like if you're in like a budget landfall deck, it's fine. It's a fine utility land.
Yeah, I think Reliquary Tower is going to be like the special one this episode where you spend 8 minutes hating on it, just absolutely dunking on it, and then the rest of these are going to be like pretty short, concise opinions and thoughts.
That sounds about right. The third one is Rogue's Passage. This card's amazing. I love it. I've never been disappointed by this card ever.
Yeah, so Rogue's Passage I think is up there for one of my favorite utility lands of all time, because in any sort of like battle cruiser deck where you have a big monster of hatred that you need to crush your opponent with, I love it because I run it in mono green lands because I make in Cura because I make Merit Lage a lot, and one bird is all it takes for Merit Lage to
Yeah.
get stopped. So it's really nice to have Rogue's Passage in that package. And then same thing, Sephara. I have a Sephara Voltron deck flying, big 7/7 angel. One bird stops her, one spider token. And it's like it's nice to just be able to like have that extra bit, and the opportunity cost is really low because those are both monocolor decks. Like I can rock a lot of colorless lands before I start to feel the pain.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just such a nice like insurance policy to have. Like, oh, should I have an opponent who's low on life and I need to get past a blocker? Oh, got this land over here. That's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
I am curious about our resident blue player's opinion of Reliquary Tower, or not Reliquary, sorry, of Rogue's Passage.
I mean, I don't play Rogue's Passage in like any deck really. I don't really have any decks that have a need for it. I think, yeah, if you want to get creatures in, it's pretty good. The opportunity cost is really low. Like untapped lands are generally like pretty playable, regardless of what other abilities they have. Rogue's Passage is in like 19% of decks according to EDH Rec. It's a great card. It goes in many decks. I think a lot of people forget about the new Access Tunnel.
Oh yeah.
Access Tunnel is only in 2% of possible decks, and it's basically the same thing, but it only gives unblockable to a creature that has power 3 or less, but it costs 3 to activate instead of 4. And I think a lot of people forget about Access Tunnel and just go with Rogue's Passage, but if you're trying to get in a small creature in for damage, Access Tunnel is better by having that lesser activation cost.
Oh yeah, I love it for ninjutsu style decks. There's Nashi, not Moon Sage's Scion, but Nashi, the original one with ninjutsu. You hit someone, you bolts the Citadel to the top of each player's deck. That's the home. Broken combat damage trigger, low power is like so good for Access Tunnel. Whereas I feel like Rogue's Passage is more for like I have a big beater. It already kind of has evasion, but I it's just an insurance policy. That's where both cards kind of fit. I think Rogue's Passage is a home run.
Yeah, it's quite good. Related card is Kessig Wolfrun, which is a card that gives trample and plus X plus O. You put in red green and some amount of X when you're tapping it, and it gives that much additional power and trample. That's another one that I'm just a huge fan of.
Kessig Wolfrun is probably like one of the best land win conditions in Commander. So you have like at the pinnacle, Dark Depths Merit Lage, I think is very hard to beat.
What? Field of the Dead is at the
yeah,
pinnacle?
no. I was about to say, yeah, Field of the Dead's number 2 in my opinion. I think Dark Depths is the strongest. I think one big monster is better than a bunch of tiny ones sometimes. Scoot Swarm does Field of the Dead's job better in my opinion. But they're both very good.
To a board wipe.
They're very good, both of them. And I feel like I respect your answer of Field of the Dead, but I politely disagree as a lands player. I think Merit Lage is stronger. But I definitely think third is Kessig Wolfrun. And Kessig Wolfrun is just an incredible mana sink. Put it on a death touch creature and watch as your opponent weeps. Like you will just like fireball them from your mana base. It's absurd. In any sort of like red-green ramp deck, you should be playing Kessig Wolfrun. In any sort of big monster deck, Xenagos, where you get double the plus X plus O from the land because of Xenagos's power doubling trigger. Like it kills people. Trample's the best evasion word. It's better than flying, like by a mile.
Yeah, there are a lot of creatures with flying these days, so flying blockers aren't usually too hard to come by.
I think a lot of people forget about with this card is by itself with almost no mana investment, it is also green-red give target creature trample. Or you don't actually have to pump 100 into X, it's just a trample granter. Even if you're not ramping super hard, it still lets you give trample, which is really powerful on its own.
Extra thing I love about Kessig Wolfrun over Rogue's Passage is that you can keep it up as a combat trick like during combat. You don't need to invest the mana beforehand. You can kind of see how the blocks pan out and then decide if you want to dump trample and some extra power onto a creature, which is really
it's
sweet.
also defensive, right? You can hold it up and then your blocker could get more attack and block more profitably.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, just a great card all around for sure.
Oh yeah, it's awful to face in Commander, and it's awful to face in Limited. If you see your opponent play Keswick Wolf Run in Limited, you just scoop. It's over, especially for a control deck. Oh my gosh, it's so over.
Oh yeah, that's nasty to play against. Yeah, yeah. Well, I think we're in agreement. The fourth most played utility land, and I was debating whether to consider this a utility land, is Cavern of Souls. This card is obviously very good. Taps, you choose a creature type, it taps for colors, it taps for any color that can pay for that type, and then creature spells of that type with that mana can't be countered, which is just it's so strong.
Yeah, so Cavern of Souls I like in any creature type focused deck, but also in select decks where you have a combo piece commander or combo piece in the deck that you cannot have counterspelled. So you see it a lot in Legacy, or at least you did see it a lot in Legacy. Doomsday Piles will have a Cavern of Souls and name Wizard for Thassa's Oracles to make it uncounterable. Stuff like this is that's like the hidden mode of Cavern of Souls is combo protection, and the main mode is like this goes in any creature type deck and is very good there.
I think this also goes in any deck that relies heavily on its commander. Like, you don't have to be a goblin deck and have to, have it hit every creature type. You can consider this a land that is just colorless for everything other than your commander, which it grants uncounterable. And that is still good enough to play. If you really need your commander in play, it's just a staple in that, whether or not you have any other creature of that type, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree. Cavern of Souls is incredible.
Sucks that it's like $50.
Oh yeah, I know.
The fifth one was kind of a surprise to me. War Room, the land that you pay 3, tap it, pay life equals the number of colors in your commander's color identity to draw a card. And this is a land that I think is okay, but I'm definitely kind of surprised it's number 5.
So I actually play War Room in one of my decks. First things first, it's hilarious if you're in colorless. 3 mana tap, draw a card. You pay no life because your commander has no color identity. I've seen people play Castle Lochthwain against me, and I'm like, War Room exists, right? But for me, I think War Room really shines in one strategy in particular, and that is mono white. Specifically, I run it in Sephara, where I go Sephara and I hold up protection spells, because once I've resolved my Voltron commander, it's all about protection spells for her. From there, if no one casts anything scary to destroy my board or whatever, I just draw a card off the War Room. And then I can keep up holding up my protection spells. That's the big thing, is if you are draw go and you have a lot of instant speed interaction, War Room makes your mana never dead, which I feel is actually very quality to have on a colorless land.
That's true. Yeah, I hadn't in monocolor. It's definitely nice because the life pay is almost negligible.
Yeah, I think that War Room is a genuine staple in colorless and monocolor decks. Even mono blue, every single monocolor deck, I think you should be running War Room. It is, in my opinion, one of the best utility lands, period. So obviously in colorless, it's like super good, right? It's just, you can draw a card if you need to. But in mono white and mono red, where you struggle for card draw, extra card draw in the mana base is really excellent. And then, but even like mono green, where you have excess mana, turn excess mana into excess cards, that's great. Mono black, why not, I guess? The life loss sometimes has synergy. Mono blue, you might think, oh, you have plenty of card draw, why do you need this? It's just like Elk said, it plays phenomenally into control game plans. It just plays so well with like control. So I think it's any like mid-rangey deck, and it's an untapped land too. I think this land is like ultra good, and I think I have like 3 copies of the card just on hand in case I build multiple monocolor decks, so I can run it in all of them.
That's fair. I think I don't play monocolor decks, and I think the one deck I've played this in was a 3-color deck, so it makes sense that I'm underestimating it a little.
Okay, don't do that.
It was okay there. It was fine.
I mean, it's okay in like Varak Warped Sangir because you can pay 4 life and draw 2 cards or whatever, which is kind of funny. But
Yeah.
Yeah. Just having like an emblem floating around the game that's like 4 mana draw a card is like that's
Oh, for
nice.
sure. The sixth one is Buried Ruin, the one that you can, I believe, sacrifice it to bring back an artifact from your graveyard to your hand.
Yep, untapped colorless. You can pay 2, tap, sack it to bring an artifact from your graveyard back to your hand. Hopefully, it's kind of apparent why regrowth for artifact is good in a lot of decks that require artifact for combo. I feel like getting your key equipment, getting your combo piece, all sorts of things like that. It's very low opportunity cost. I could see it in like a mono blue deck. I run it in my mono blue artifact combo deck to rebuy like an artifact that got blown up or whatever. And I can also cycle for it using the Transmute of Teleria West. So you can actually fetch this card really
that's
easily in
cool.
mono blue artifact decks.
Yeah. No, I like this card a lot. This is
Yeah.
It's not one that consistently finds itself in my decks a lot, just because I don't run super artifact heavy decks. But in the decks where it is in, it's always, quite a nice card to be able to have as a backup plan.
I don't play it in any deck.
Really?
I think most of my artifact decks are blue, and it is a budget Academy Ruins, but I happen to have an Academy Ruins, so like I would almost always use Academy Ruins over this.
I play both.
I see it.
But then in my like red ones, I don't run this as my artifact recursion either. The opportunity cost is pretty low, but it's like the benefit is so low as well that like I would rather play like a trash for treasure type effect to just get the artifact into play, which I think is faster. If I was playing like mono white artifacts, mono black artifacts, something it may be colorless, I'd probably play it. But honestly, it really doesn't see playing any of my blue or red artifact decks, and that's to me those are the big artifact
Yeah,
colors.
it feels like comparing it to Trash or Treasures, like comparing Mortuary Mire to Animate Dead. Like, of course, Animate Dead's better, but it's also not a land.
I mean, yeah, but if I'm running many trash for treasure effects
Oh, yeah.
as my recursion slots, I kind of don't care about Buried Ruin, and I'd rather have War Room in that utility.
Yeah, okay.
slot,
If you hit like a critical mass of artifact reanimation, then of course that Buried Alive is a good card. Buried Ruin is not that good of a card. Where I think Buried Ruin really shines is mono blue. Academy Ruins is very good, and but Buried Ruin lets you buy back it directly into your hand, which can be exactly what you need. I think Buried Ruin also is really good in Voltron style decks where you get your key piece of equipment blown up, so you can like rebuy your commander's plate or what have you, like really strong equipment, just right away to your hand, recast it, Sigarda's Aid, put it on your creature, you're back to swinging immediately.
Interesting that I don't think I play this in my Voltron deck, but I also tend to be afraid of colorless utility lands in decks where I'm not running a whole lot of like ramp that can color fix me, and that deck does not run a whole lot of ramp that can color fix me. It's generally good if you're playing a deck where I can see how like if you're running like a full artifact deck, you probably have that space kind of figured out already with your artifact recursion. But if you just have like a handful of key artifacts that you want to pack something just in case you lose, then I think it's definitely a helpful card to have around. Also very budget compared to some other alternatives. The seventh most popular one is Karn's Bastion, which is a colorless producing land that has a tap ability, 4 mana, tap it to proliferate. Pretty simple land. And this one I feel like if you're in a deck that has a lot of counters, it's going to be good. That's generally been my experience with it. It's a pretty good rate for getting a proliferate off of a land.
Yeah, it's like, if you care about counters, you're playing a Planeswalker deck or whatever, it's decent. If not, it's probably useless. It's a very, specific card. So, I think it's all right. Definitely, there are a lot of counters decks that are 3 colors, so it is a little awkward if you run too many of these, but, it's decent.
Yeah, my mono blue artifacts deck is helmed by Tekathal, which doubles all proliferation triggers. This card is broken in that deck because it is a combo piece with Magistrate Scepter. A lot of the time, 4 tap, take an extra turn after this one is often what this card says, which is very good. Once again, though, you should have a critical mass of counters in your deck, or care about counters on a critical number of cards. Planeswalkers decks should probably have this if you're 2 colors or less. And if you have any amount of the cards that say whenever you put a counter on this creature, do something, there's a whole glut of those. It's really cool to like have all those on board, hold up like, you know, a protection spell for your board. If nothing happens, you activate it and then trigger all those creatures at once. Oh, it's so cool. I love Karn's Bastion, but it's very niche. Very niche.
The 8th land is one that I have never played, and I haven't even seen it played all that much, is Command Beacon, which is the one that you sacrifice it to put your commander into your hand from the command zone.
I genuinely think that this card is worthless for most applications. There are a few niche edge cases where this card's good. First is removal magnet commander that absolutely needs to be in play all the time or else you wither and die. So Linda, Cheerful Tormentor, I ran this in. I find that I'm generally happier not playing those kinds of decks. But Linda, by the way, just pretend she says you lose the game if this is not in play, because she has a wall of text about curses and moving curses around and stuff. You need to have her in play as your value engine in that deck or you do nothing. So I like it in those decks, but I just don't like those decks, so I don't end up playing this card often, but it's good there, genuinely. The other option is specifically for like 2 or 3 commanders where you need to cast it from your hand. So I'm thinking the Myojin or... I'm
on the EDA Trek page for the card, and I see Phage the Untouchable.
Phage the Untouchable.
It's somehow only in 89% of Phage decks.
Yeah, they mostly use Torpor.
The other players just believe in Torpor Orb.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, there's a lot of command. There's the mono black dinosaur that says reveal it from your hand. Target creature gets a fear counter or whatever, and then you play it from your hand, and then it blows up all creatures with a prey counter on them or whatever it's called.
Oh yeah,
that's from Ixalan.
If somebody's playing that card in the command zone, they're bold.
Yeah, you need it for that commander, or else it does nothing. There's the Hacken.
Oh yeah,
mm-hmm. Yeah, the night card that you can only play from your graveyard. You can't play it from the command zone. This card is crucial to Hacken because you need to get him into your hand and then discard him. Netherborn Altar also sees play for the similar reasons. Campfire is the third option.
So I agree. I generally think this card is like mostly garbage. Like if your deck is like, oh, my commander keeps dying 4 times and my deck doesn't function without the commander, I feel like it's easier to just build a more well-rounded deck that doesn't need the commander to like, you know, have the deck just function more often rather than play this funny land. Like on the EDH Trek page, people played in like Titania. Why? Titania, like, if it's in the command zone, you don't get the benefit for sacking the land. It doesn't really make much sense. I guess you get it back. So I think in general this card is like quite bad. If you're playing Phage, yes, there is technically also a niche CDH reason to play it as well. Like on the EDH Rec page, you'll see Magda Brazen Outlaw is actually up there, and that's for CDH reasons because the Magda deck really needs its commander in play. Sometimes there's a Drannith Magistrate, so you can get around Drannith Magistrate with Command Beacon.
There might be situations where it's useful in a particular deck, but I personally don't find myself being gravitated to that sort of deck.
Yeah,
so.
it's crazy because this can be one of the most useless cards generally, but in like exactly Hacken and the few options I listed, it's the most important card in the deck.
The 9th most played is I also don't know whether to call this a utility land, but I will for this purpose. Darksteel Citadel. Just an artifact land, indestructible, taps for colorless. That's what it does. And it just kind of does that. Like it, I don't know. I've had fine experiences with it. I'm sure there's somebody trying to make scissors work in Commander, in which case they're having a good time with Darksteel Citadel. But
that's me.
Yes. Oh man, I love Insnull artifact.
I played a Noyan Dar for a little bit. He's the like 5 mana 4/4. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, you put 3 counters on a land, turn it into a creature.
Yeah.
So like my whole deck was just,
Oh yeah, yeah.
you go like cantrip, 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 put like 12 counters on my indestructible thing, and then cast a board wipe, and I have my 12/12 indestructible, or I guess 15/15 at that point, and then I just like bash you for 15. It was fun.
Oh yeah, it's incredible in any land animation deck because you just get a free bit of indestructible along with your land creature. You can go the Pauper route and run Cleansing Wildfire as land hate, but the times you draw Darksteel Citadel, you can do it on your own land in mono red ramp. Cleansing Wildfire destroys any land, and cantrips draws a card, and also the owner of that land searches their library. Notably, though, the land doesn't have to go to the graveyard. So if you target an indestructible land, it's just ramp for whoever got targeted.
Yeah, it's just rampant growth with card draw staple.
Yeah,
Pauper, which is
exactly.
awesome. I love Pauper. It's so fun.
Also, this is a tech I've actually recently developed for Sephara. I run Darksteel Citadel there, or at least I run Flagstones of Trocaire for a similar effect with White Orchid Phantasm. White, destroy target non-basic land. Its controller searches the library for a basic land and puts it into play tapped. That is white,
Oh, yeah.
ramp. And if you target a Flagstones of Trocaire or an indestructible land, which I can do in Sephara, and it's also a cheap flyer, and also it's land hate for my opponents when that's relevant. So it's a triple whammy there, which is really nice. And the downside's really low because Flagstones of Trocaire is just a plains, for example. And Darksteel Citadel also applies. It's a single color, monocolor deck. A colorless land isn't going to really mess me up.
It's one of those cards that's just like it has enough random use cases scattered around.
Yeah. Also affinity.
Yeah, even it's just like, yeah, if you're just running an artifact deck in 1 or 2 colors, like, wow, why not? If you got if you can afford a colorless land, yeah, toss a Darksteel Citadel on there. Why not?
Isn't quite as scary as the other artifact lands. They get swept up in a Vandal Blast or what have you. It still gets farewell.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, being out of Vandal Blast range is definitely key. And then the 10th most played land is Inventor's Fair. Taps for a colorless. I don't remember if it enters tapped. And then you can tap and sacrifice it, paying 4 mana if you have 3 artifacts in play to search your library for an artifact card and put it into your hand. I hope I remember that all right.
Yeah.
It also gains you a life on your upkeep.
On your upkeep if you have better.
Oh yeah, that's true.
So obviously this card's broken in life gain decks where that's the best part about the card is you gain a life on your upkeep for 3 artifacts in play. No. Of course.
When I played Lantern Control, that was actually so relevant because sometimes people could use Noble Hierarch to get under my Ensnaring Bridge and ship me in for 1 a turn.
Oh no.
So the fact that it gained me a life, it would actually offset that.
Death
and
by
that was
1,000 paper cuts.
Yeah.
Oh man, you just brought back so many memories of Lantern Control. It's terrible. The 1 Noble Hierarch. This card is incredible. It's an artifact tutor in your mana base. Shocker. Who guessed that would be good? The 1 life is basically irrelevant in Commander, but funny for some play pattern reasons that Khan mentioned.
Yeah, this is a land where I so frequently am building a deck. I look at Inventor's Fair. I go, I want this. I see that it's like $15. I go, how much do I want this? And then I just kind of debate it a lot because it's good. It's it's very good. But
the land is incredible.
It's good enough to make me consider a $15 card, which has to be pretty good.
Yeah, I still haven't bought mine, but I would put it in Tekethal if I had it. That's a vow.
Obviously, I love this card. It's like one of my favorite cards of all time. Lands and artifacts are my favorite types, and this is a land artifact kind of thing.
Yeah.
Oh my god, and it searches up Crucible of Worlds, which lets you play your Inventor's Fair so you can just tutor an artifact every single turn. It's like in my top 10 favorite cards of all time. I absolutely adore Inventor's Fair. This one is like, I don't play Buried Ruin, but I play Inventor's Fair. It's so good. It needs a reprint so badly. It has just not been reprinted in so long. It's crazy.
Hey, it's getting the secret letter drop, Stark Expo.
Yeah, that doesn't mess with the price. That's gonna suck.
I felt an audible pain radiate throughout the podcast.
Secret Lair reprints don't count as real reprints. They don't lower the price.
Yeah, they
so.
don't. Yeah, for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that is the top 10. The other one I wanted to cover because I feel like it's good, but probably a bit more money than would get it into the top 10 here is Field of the Dead.
Field of the Dead's broken. It's really funny to call that a utility land when in reality it's just like a way to win the game.
It's cheaper than Cavern of Souls, but it's lower on the list.
Yeah, I think it's also Cavern of Souls has had a lot of reprints, and it's had like 15 years to cement itself, or like 13, 12 years, something like that.
Yeah, Field of the Dead is just like really hard to interact with. And then also just like if you Vesuva that thing, if you Thespian stage it, like it's a good Thespian stage target. Echoing Deeps, replay it from your graveyard. Once you start to get like 3 Field of the Deads in play, you are hard pressed to lose that game.
It's such a crazy card because you don't need to be a landfall deck. You don't need to be in any deck. You don't need to copy it. You don't need to do anything at all. If you are just playing a deck that can afford 1 additional tapped colorless land, you should probably play the card. Because even if throughout the whole course of the game you make 2 zombies, that's probably better value than most other lands will have provided, right? That's 2 chump blocks,
Yeah,
right?
why
That's
do the zombies
2 points
enter
of extra
untapped?
damage.
Why aren't they tapped zombies? You can block with them the same turn you get them, and like, why? Growth Spiral becomes like a 2/2 flash creature? Like, who thought this card was okay? They were in Standard at the same time, Growth Spiral and Field of the Dead. Uro was in Standard with Field of the Dead. Like, why?
The fact that this land doesn't have like text that prevents you from slamming a bunch of basics and then getting zombies off of it is wild. Like I would expect it to be like, oh, if you play a land that has a different name than the rest of your lands, and there are like 6 or more others, then you're good. But no, once you hit the 7, you can just go ham with basics. Do a scape.
This is the most goated scape shift inclusion after Valakut. Yeah. Like, Valakut lightning bolts your opponents for that many lands. This one, just like, you don't even need a Dryad of the Elysian Grove to set all of your types to forest. If you scape shift sacrificing like 10 lands, and then you have Vesuva enter as a copy of Field of the Dead, you make 20 zombies for free. What? Like, why is this okay?
And don't forget, if you're running this card, to run a couple of snow basics, because they do have different names than normal basics, which just
split your land.
Makes hitting the 7 ones, just make it way easier. This is arguably one of the strongest lands out there. It's really, I mean, it's banned in 5 formats currently, and I believe was banned in Standard when it was legal. Maybe it wasn't, I don't remember.
Yeah.
But anything that is, I mean, it's banned in Modern. Like, that's should tell you how powerful the card is.
Yeah, when my Dark Depths line fails, my graveyard gets exiled, what have you. This is the card I reach for in my land stack.
Oh yeah, it's my Plan C in any land stack, and guess what? It's as good as Plan A.
Yeah, no, I really am splitting hairs saying that Dark Depths is better than Field of the Dead. They're both in the Banned and Modern Club. They're just both like incredible cards.
And playing Modern during Field of the Dead was a bit of a dark time. It was just Primeval Titan, 2 Field of the Deads. Primeval Titan, 2 Field of the Dead, swing with it. Uro was also legal. Oh god.
That's rough.
That deck was brutal to play against.
I miss that deck so much. You have no idea. I just want one more Modern League.
Oh, me too, because Lantern hosed it. I just played in Snaring Bridge and they couldn't do anything.
That's fair.
All right, so those are the top 10 plus some honorable mentions.
I want to get your guys' opinions on Vault of the Archangel. Enters untapped, taps for colorless, and then the activation cost, it's a bit steep, 2 black, white, but he gives all of your creatures Death Touch and Lifelink until end of turn. I really like this one. I think this is super fun on defense. If you've got nothing else going on, you can just hold up the mana and you're like, I have 2 1/1s. You're going to swing into me. They'll have Death Touch. But then also giving your whole team Lifelink and Death Touch makes attacking with your like dinky, crappy guys way better. I'm playing it in my Mardu deck, which has Tymna, and obviously getting my little dudes in is extra good in a Tymna deck. So I think this card's pretty sweet.
This is a true story. I was playing against an Orzhov life gain deck, and there was an Artifacts player that tutored up Pithing Needle and named Vito Thorn of the Duskgrows. The life gain player untapped, played Vault of the Archangel, and then activated it, and then killed that player with the veto triggers anyway. It was so funny. That's like one of the most memorable Commander moments for me.
It's definitely a good card. I'm staring at it and going, does this need to be in my Liesa deck? Is this an exclusion that I've just overlooked? 'Cause I've seen this card. I've had this card on my radar for 12 whole years. I know this card very well, but I just haven't ended up putting it into a deck yet. I don't know. The colorless tapping and the expensive activation cost have like rubbed my brain the wrong way, but it's a good card, so I should try it.
I have a card I need to vent about, but I want to hear you guys talk about it first. Bazooka Bog.
It's too good. I wish it was worse.
It's really good. Yeah, I agree. It's a phenomenal card. I hate with this, like, people are like, oh, it enters tapped, it's basically useless. It's so good.
It's so
good.
good.
Late game, take target graveyard deck out of the game. Like, it's infinite damage against a Buldrotha player late game. That's great. What other land does that?
I generally don't like Bazooka Bog in my decks unless there's certain qualifications. So I think Bazooka Bog's ceiling is really high. Bazooka Bog's floor, which it often is at, is tapped land on turn 1 or 2. That's how I feel most people play Bazooka Bog, and that's all I ever see it as. And sometimes it might snipe a graveyard, maybe turn 5 or so, and then that graveyard player rebuilds. Nothing happens. Where Bazooka Bog is at its peak, utterly broken peak, by the way, is you have crop rotation, or you have White of the Reliquary, or you have Knight of the Reliquary, or you have Urza's Cave, another very good land that lets you tutor lands into play. Any one of those cards is phenomenal because it is instant speed graveyard interaction off of those, and that is incredible. Whereas I feel like it's a little bit mopey in like a mono black deck where you're just like Bazooka Bog and then you exile someone's graveyard. I think it has a little bit more text if you're running Expedition map for a Cabal Coffers kind of situation. It has a little bit more text there, but I think overall I'm actually kind of down on Bazooka Bog, except for when you can abuse it, like crop rotation. Then it's like one of the best cards in your deck. Very strong utility.
Maybe this is my like high land count player thing. I find that a colored tap land is really nice. A colored tap land with good utility upside is really nice if I'm playing a deck where I have enough lands to be able to like put it off a couple turns, get some card draw online, save it a turn or two until I have a better play for it. I think it's the same deal with the Myriad landscape, where if you're playing a low land count, it's awkward. You're going to have a turn 3 where it's like, I have a tap land here. But also, if you're running a higher land count, it's pretty easy to shove it off a couple extra turns and get a critical turn 5 hit against a good graveyard.
Yeah, I would be more inclined to agree with you if we didn't just get Bogart Trawler, which I think should...
Oh, yeah, 100%.
I think Bogart Trawler is better than Bazooka Bog in most decks that are currently playing Bazooka Bog. This being said, I think Bazooka Bog is better if you have a crop rotation and maybe even play both.
Yeah, Bogart Trawler is so good. I am shoving that in every deck I possibly can.
Yeah, I bought like 3 of them as soon as I could.
It's disgusting. It's so good.
Well, honestly, we could just jump off here real quick. All of the like MDFCs that are cards on the cards on one side, lands on the other side, spells on one side, I guess, lands on the other side, that enter untapped, I think are like S tier utility lands that go in basically every single deck.
Okay, like flat out true. Also, like Bog Bloom Rogue or whatever the stupid rogue from Zendikar Rising is. I've considered that deck for Farrakha. This is the French vanilla on the front. I don't even know its power and toughness or its rules text. It's like, it literally has no rules text. It's just a creature on the front. And then on the back, it's a black tap land. I considered it for that deck for Tortured Existence to up my creature count. It's a tap land on the back, and on the front, it's just a creature. So I can exile to Farrakha. I can put it in Tortured Existence. I ultimately decided it wasn't good enough, but I still considered it, which is crazy considering it's just a French vanilla.
Yeah, I know. You were mentioning that because I was looking at my Sharoom slide deck and trying to figure out what how do I keep the creature count high enough for Oversold Cemetery and other cards while also figuring out how to cram more utility into the deck. And yeah, the MDFC creatures are so good for that.
They're just so compact. It's like it cures like the commander player problem of like I don't want to play lands in my deck, but also like fixes like curves, interaction, like it does everything. It's so incredible.
What was another land you wanted to talk about, Snail?
Cathedral Lore was the only other one I had in my mind.
It has Exalted,
Yeah,
right?
it's a tapped
Yeah,
colorless land with Exalted. So when a creature attacks alone, +1/+1.
I find it really funny. I have put it in a handful of different decks for brief stints. I've had it in like, creative, weird techie decks. It has never found a permanent home in a deck yet, but it's a very funny card.
I actually had this card on my mind very recently. So I've always considered it for Sephara, because Sephara is the only creature in that deck that attacks. I leave my other flyers back as indestructible blockers most of the time. And my deck is built around the 4-mana angel, Sublime Archangel, that gives all of your creatures Exalted. So Sephara needs 4 flyers to come down for 1 mana. And then next turn you play Sublime Archangel and attack with Sephara, and she gets +5/+5, bare minimum. So that's incredible because that's a 2-hit kill. 1-hit kill if you have double strike. She will 1-tap someone. I was like, oh, maybe I run Cathedral 4 in here. I never needed it because my indestructible creatures will typically carry that torch, and +1/+1 isn't enough to really throw off the difference of a double striking Sephara. Where it is really good though is Ryu's Storm's Edge and Aurelia the War Leader. These 2 cards, when they attack, they give you an extra combat step. If you are playing a Voltron deck with either of these 2 as your commander, you get double Exalted triggers. You get to double dip on Exalted.
That's cool. Yes, it has like +1/+1, then +2. Yeah, that's pretty sweet. I need to find a deck for it. I need to fit it in another deck.
I have never considered this card.
This is very much not a U-coded card.
Yeah, this is not a card that I've ever thought about.
The last one is High Market and Lazotep Quarry. Both of these cards have tap, sacrifice a creature on them. High Market could literally just say tap, sacrifice a creature, do nothing, and people would still play it. It gains you 1 life when you do so. And it taps for colorless. Lazotep Quarry taps for colorless, and you can tap, sacrifice a creature to add 1 mana of any color. And then also has the ability to pay X and 2 and tap it to return to exile a card from your graveyard and make a 4/4 or
it eternalizes it, right?
Yeah.
It exiles it and you make a copy of it. That's a 4/4.
Yeah, X2. You exile a card with mana value X or less from your graveyard and you make a 4/4. Activate only as sorcery, so you can rebuy a creature from your graveyard, but it's a 4/4. It's no Shifting Woodland, that ability, but it's still very good.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice that it's that ability alongside the untapped land and also the sacrifice creature option. Like, there's a lot of good utility baked into that card.
Because it just has like a third mode.
I think you should run both if you want one. I played in Kira. Kira has a death trigger. You can crop rotate for this before Kira comes down, and then immediately sacrifice her to it to get her death trigger. Any Aristocrats deck, you want to run both, I think. It's nice just to have a sack outlet, like, oh, someone is, Cyclonic Rifting, but I'd rather have my monster in the graveyard. Boop, into the yard you go. Path to Exile, bam, better than Exile. And I mentioned Shifting Woodland. Oh gosh, guys, please take me away from lands. I'm going to be talking all day.
That's okay. We can take you away from lands as we move on to the old question zone. We're going to answer some questions from viewers. If you want your questions answered, please put question zone at the front of it, and it helps us find it easier. You can additionally tweet at Elk or I. Links in the description to that. Spotify comments, I still can't pull up. Sorry. I'll try and get around to that or reply to those. Grumble3Cakes asks, is there a card that got you into playing Magic? Theirs was Vampire Nocturnus. I actually have a specific answer for this. And it was Edgar Markov, the one that sets a player's life total to 10 and steals their turn. That was one of the first cards in one of the first games of Magic that I ever played, and I was like, man, this card's cool. Like, this does weird things. Stealing someone's turn, that's awesome. And that really got me into the game.
So the thing that got me into the game, and I guess this is just the thing that I found most exciting about my first deck. It was a mono black deck, and it was Vampire Outcasts, which is a Bloodthirst 2 lifelinker 2/2 for 4 mana. So if you've dealt damage to an opponent this turn, it's a 4/4 for 4 mana lifelink, which is pretty cool. And then I paired that with Tormented Souls, which is an unblockable 1 mana creature. It can't be blocked, can't block. And so I would use my little 1/1 pinger guy and then get the payoff of this crazy 4 mana 4/4 lifelinker.
Yeah. So I started my card game playing in Hearthstone. And I played Hearthstone for a while, and I was like, I bounced around like top 200, top 100 legend. I was a really big ladder grinder. When Hearthstone started to wane for me, and I stopped liking Blizzard and etc. Well, I don't know if I ever liked Blizzard even while I was playing Hearthstone, but I hopped on over to Magic for a little bit. And when I first started to hop over, I played Magic in the past, and I played Pokemon in the past, and it was like, too many words, scary, and then I stopped playing, and then I got on Hearthstone for a while. I started playing again around 2019, so it was like 2018, 2019, War of the Spark time. Kaladesh is when I first started playing. Kaladesh was fine, and I had a good time. Mayhem Devil was the card that kept me forever. I love that card so much. Removal engine, win condition, it does everything. It triggers off your lands. Like, what? Throwing like fire around. I'll always love pinging people. It's like forever and ever. You might be like, oh my gosh, Elk's really new to the game. This was 5 years ago, War of the Spark. A little bit of a reality check for everyone.
I don't know. I've been playing for like 12, almost 13 years. So
yeah,
that's 5 years is baby numbers to me.
Technically, I've been playing for longer. I played a few games of Tarkir Limited, but it was really weird.
Okay.
Morph really scared me.
Morphs still scare me.
Morph was a really funny way to get introduced to Magic, so that put me off for a couple of years.
I don't know how to pronounce your username. My play group loves to play graveyard decks, so it's not unusual to play against 2 or 3 graveyard decks. Is it okay to run a buttload of graveyard hate? Or maybe just stupid because 3 people will target me because of Rest in Peace?
Yeah, don't get as egregious as Rest in Peace, but what I recommend you do is like weave in a Thraben's Charm, weave in Kaya's, what is that card's name?
Kaya's Guile, yeah.
Kaya's Guile.
That one's sweet.
So I recommend charms that have graveyard hate as a mode, but also have other effects. Blessed Respite is another example. You can reshuffle someone's graveyard, and it's also a fog. So use these kinds of cards against these players. It's preferably ones at instant speed. So that way you can sort of like snipe someone's graveyard. Noxious Revival. That card's good, just period. And also it's graveyard hate in the right situation.
Instant speed, one time, exile all graveyards is nice if you can do it. I would just go for that. And if you're exiling all graveyards, then, at least the graveyard players will go, okay, that person across the table is also losing their graveyard.
I actually would do the opposite. I would play Rest in Peace. I would play Leyline of the Void. I would play Planar Void, all of those. Because the problem is, if you are just jamming your deck with a bunch of these one-time hosers, your opponents, who are getting the full use out of their graveyard, they're going to be Muldrotha-ing all over the place. And then they're going to go, who do I attack first? Well, this person has 3 cards in their deck that instantly lose me the game as soon as they draw them, so I have to take them out first. Whereas if you like Leyline of the Void turn 0, then you just get to like play your game plan. Your opponents are totally hosed until they get rid of it, and they don't get to take you out of the game, and you just get to fight them first. So I would just go super hard on it, because I think if you just play the like random graveyard hate, you're just the most obvious person to attack, and you haven't stopped them from doing the graveyard stuff, so they have the capacity to attack you.
Yeah, I could see the argument for that. I feel like that only holds if it's pure graveyard only. If there's like a hybrid sort of like I can do my aristocrats game plan and sometimes that involves the graveyard, then I feel like you become a little more imperiled if you're just like face up, I got my Leyline of the Void in play.
Yeah, that's true. I guess it depends on to what extent they're like greeting on the graveyard.
Yeah, absolutely. I recommend graveyard hate as frequently as you have something like a artifact or enchantment removal spell at this point, or very close to it. I very seldom do I have a deck that doesn't have 5 or so pieces of graveyard interaction. It feels like everything comes back.
I know, right? Okay.
Is that a podcast?
Should we? Yeah. Are we gonna?
Yeah.
We good to
I'm
call
good
it
to
there?
call it.
Yeah. Sounds good.
All right.